hooked up. Hi there, good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for that really nice introduction. Sometimes people just read, stuff, but Megan was actually connecting to it, so that's really nice. It's a very, oh yeah, I don't have to stand next to that so much. It's great to have this chance to talk with you this morning about young children. There's so many topics that we read about and talk about and that are coming up here that are profound and important regarding technology in these times. But often we don't hear a lot about young children, and especially from the point of view I would like to talk to you from, and it is thinking about who young children are. It's usually what I call a child development perspective. How do they learn? How do they grow and develop? What do they need? And taking those ideas to help us think about what does that mean for how we get a perspective on technology, what would be right for them and what might not be. So then I think, okay, if we can get some ideas together like this, it can help us think about any new thing that comes along, because some of the stuff coming on the market, like toy unboxing videos and some app to soothe the baby in a crib, you can't even believe this stuff is coming, and it helps us decide why isn't this any good and be able to articulate it. So I have six, I thought about, the field of child development has a huge body of knowledge, one I feel really passionate about because it's what I've been doing my whole life. But there's a lot of information, child development theory and research that helps us understand kids. And we often don't hear about it, but I thought through sort of all of that, and I came up with 6 core ideas that I would like to talk with you about this morning, and hopefully they're going to be useful for you to take. And you don't have to write them down because I made a handout, and there's going to be a handout available of, among other things, a lot of stuff to take from the conference that you can download from Dropbox after the conference, so don't worry about notes. So, oh yeah, I have this little clicker too. Yeah. So, this is a photo from Mission Hill School in Boston. So, as I said, six core ideas. Number 1, young children use their whole bodies and all of their senses to learn about the world. We all know that young kids are moving all the time. They have to move. Moving is really what drives their development. In the 90s, a lot of us in my field got really excited because as advances in neuroscience were occurring, crossing over into early childhood, we began to hear from the brain scientists why active learning and play were so critical for young children for brain development. And that was incredibly reassuring because all of the things we understood in our field were really getting backed up by what brain science was saying. Young kids really, when they are moving, when they are engaging in the environment, the neurons in their brain are getting stronger, the synapses are occurring, and brain development is happening. When a baby is born, the volume and weight of the brain is about a little more than a quarter of an adult-sized brain. By the age of 3, do you know how much it's grown? To 80%. And by the age of 5 to 90%. I mean, that's phenomenal brain development in those first years of life. And how does it happen? It happens from a child being engaged and active and playing in the environment and not docile. So, when we look at a young child on a screen, you see the body is more passive. The whole body isn't active. All the senses aren't engaged. The impetus to move is redirected, really, to looking. That's a really profound and basic thing. That the movement and also the initiative to move, because it isn't just moving, it's taking initiative to move, has shifted from the child to the screen. And the shift is from acting exploring acting in the world to reacting, to taking in the movement that they see on the screen instead of the movement that's their own. To me, this is the very most basic and first developmental point, which is there are a lot of ways that screens are interfering with children's development. But this is the first place where we see a basic interference with developmental tasks that children should be doing and are undermined by screens. Okay, number 2. Children learn from having direct, first-hand experiences in the real world. Everything on a screen is a symbolic representation of something in the real world. We don't often think about that because we just know it. We don't have to think about it, but young kids actually don't understand that. The youngest of those 8 grandchildren is Max. He just turned 2, and he lives in Swaziland. So we just had a Skype call with them, and he sees me and he goes, "Go, go." He goes, "Go, go." Don't you love it? Go, go is the name for grandmother in Siswati. He's African language. So he calls me Go, go. And everyone's like, huh? But he kept trying to touch me on a Skype call, reach me, interact with me the way he did when I was in Swaziland last summer. It's very confusing for Max to try to figure out, am I in there? He can see me. Why can't he reach me like he did so recently? It's confusing. And it takes children a long time to understand that what is on that screen is not actually in there. It takes a long time. My grandson Miles punched the television when he was 4 because he thought the bad guy was coming out. And it takes even longer for children to understand that somebody designed what they're seeing on the screen, and that somebody might have had a motive other than what they're seeing at face value, but maybe it was to sell them something. It takes a long time to build that understanding, which is why advertising to kids is inherently unethical. So this ad that's from Kitty Tab says benefits of exposing young children to modern technology. It's ironic, right? Because this baby, this little girl, what's she doing? She's trying to get the thing, whatever it is, because she wants to explore it. And this is the ad for benefits. But let's just imagine it was a ball. If she could get her hands on a ball, think of all the things. She'd be rolling in her hand. She'd be rolling on the floor. She could crawl to get it. She could roll it. She could chew it. She could roll it fast, or roll it at an angle, or throw it, or bounce it. It's a myriad things she would do to learn about the ball, all very essential, because that's information she needs to get about the world and can only get it from interacting with that three-dimensional thing. So when I was in Swaziland last summer, Max was 18 months old, and he was working on the object permanence concept, which is one of the most fundamental concepts in human development. It's really the idea that you can hold a mental image of something in your mind even when you can't see it. Something exists when you can't see it. We all developed that concept when we were 18 months to 2. It's the very most fundamental, basic concept in development because it's the root of being able to use language and symbols and thinking. So he had a ball, and he was rolling it under the couch. He was doing this for the entire time we were there, the entire month of August, because it takes a long time to practice these ideas. They don't come overnight. So he rolls the ball under the couch, and then he's a little bit like, where's the ball? And then he kind of finds it under there, crawls under, brings it out, does that over and over and over and over every day, until finally he got more secure with the whole idea that the ball was still there, starts making it a game, rolls it under, and then wants me to go get it. It becomes a social game, and he's kind of solidifying that very, very important concept. But my point is, concepts in the early years are developing in children as a result of their interactions with three-dimensional materials, and there's just absolutely no way that anything on a screen could offer anything in comparison to what it is they need. So, I hope that's coming through strong enough. So, number 3, young children learn by inventing their own ideas. Children are active learners. They're not empty vessels, they're not passive. We don't pour information into their empty little heads and they absorb it. No. They actively engage with the world of objects, with people, in activities, and that's how they learn. These children in a kindergarten class, building with blocks, are working on, in their play, a lot of concepts, very important concepts in math, that you cannot teach directly. They have to be doing this and constructing it in their own minds. They're organizing the blocks in such a way that they're in sets, and they put them in order, and they have them in one-to-one correspondence to each other. And these kinds of early math concepts are really important forerunners to being able to think of more complicated things like quantity and understanding number and the constancy of number, which also, you all know this so well, you take it for granted, you don't have to think about it now, but there was a time in your life you didn't know it, and you had to build that understanding, construct it in your own mind. For example, up here, let's say we took 4 giraffes and 4 watermelons and 4 gumdrops. You'd look at them and you wouldn't even really have to think about it, like it's 4. They don't look the same. One's really big, one's really small, but it's the same quantity because you understand the 4-ness of 4 and what it really means. But it takes time to understand that. You actually had to abstract the idea of 4 out of those materials in order to realize that there is a unity among them. And littler kids will think there's more of the larger amount of thing. So if I show a child this and say, what is this? She can say 4, because that's a name. And this is one of the things that goes on all the time in all sorts of education and digital learning. Everyone's like, oh, so the kid knows 4. It's not true. You can learn the name. You can say the name. You can count in order. You can count by tens. You can do all those things by rote memory, but it doesn't mean you understand the concepts. And this is a huge issue in education, and there's so much misunderstanding about, because we have to understand what children understand. And that means probing and understanding more deeply what is it they really know. One other grandchild, Jake, is Guatemalan. So we go there every winter. Isn't that nice? Yeah. And it's beautiful there. And the year we went there when he was 5, it was also gorgeous fruit. We were all having breakfast together outside, January, sorry. And we had a great big bowl of fruit on the table. And we were all inside, and we came out, and first of all, he had set up a plate, 1 plate for every person. Some of it had been eaten by now, but he put 3 pieces of watermelon and 2 pieces of pineapple on every plate. And you nod because you know what he's doing. He's working on one-to-one correspondence. He's working on sets, right, of 3 and 2 and 1-to-1, which he's doing all naturally, all on his own. No one tells him to do it, because if you look at kids carefully, kids all over the world are doing it because they're constructing knowledge, whether they're playing with whatever, stones in Africa or watermelon in Guatemala. Children are working on building these ideas. You don't have to teach them to them directly. So teaching is an art. You have to understand a lot to know how to work with them in a way that works on their concepts as they're developing, which is highly individual. During this time period, Jake and I walked by the lake that's there, Lake Atitlan, in case anyone's ever been there. And there were 5 ducks out there in the lake. And he looked out there and he said to me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. And he looked so proud, you know. I said, yeah, you counted. He knows there's an order, but he still hasn't, and this is the same time period he's working on the fruit. He hasn't figured out yet about the fiveness of 5. What does it mean? The quantity exactly that corresponds with that name. And that's the work that he's about, and that young children are about doing. So there's a huge amount of tech toys, early childhood programs, apps that supposedly teach, just for the sake of this conversation, math to little kids. And by the very nature of the fact that it's on a screen, it's going to focus kids on getting the right answer and on naming things and on rote memory. So these exercises are going to, one after another, 4 plus 2, and you get it right or wrong, and then you get the charge. If you get the right, you get the bing, the happy bing or flower or whatever that tells you have it right. So it starts building in that feedback satisfaction, which is outside of oneself, instead of the deep sense of knowing from within that I'm working on these ideas. All of these programs, it doesn't matter really which one you look at, they're all going to focus kids on these ideas of naming, getting the right name or the wrong name, naming the letter, counting out loud, and rote memory. So they just do undermine learning as I'm talking about what it needs to be. And it gives kids the wrong idea about what learning is. They start to think it's about getting the right answer, and that the right answer is in that darn game, or it's in the teacher's mind and not within, that I'm not building like Jake. Jake would have a wrong thing. If he said 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, he would be told by whatever it is that's wrong. And he's in the process of figuring out numbers, see? So it gives kids a very misguided idea. What does it mean to be a learner? Are these ideas mine? I'm building them within, let me have confidence in them, or someone else from outside is judging them right or wrong. Also, this memorized kind of learning is thin, very thin. It doesn't hold up over time. It can look good. A lot of adults are impressed with it. A lot of testers love it because you can teach kids to get a lot of right answers on tests when you're little. But it doesn't hold up because it's not building the kind of foundation that children will need to really have a solid knowledge of math that they can build upon as they get into higher levels of math work. Okay. Young children, number 4. Young children make sense of their worldview. Hey, what time did I start? I'm going to get cute. I won't worry about that. Okay. When you and I have a difficult moment, let's say we have a bad exchange with somebody, we're having something unexpected on our way to work, something upsets us. How do we handle it? Maybe we think about it a lot. We might go over it in our minds. We might have a conversation with somebody we trust, or even write a little bit in a journal if that's something some of us do. Those tools are abstract thinker tools that we all have, but young children don't have those tools. The way young children process experiences is through play. That is what they have. Play is a really profound activity of childhood. It's universal. If you're a world traveler, you'll see that children all over the world know how to do it. They all do it everywhere. No one teaches them. It's something that's wired into the human being that universally has got to be critical to human development and human adaptation. So the first thing that play does is help children make sense of experiences they've had. A simple example, my grandson Jackson, when he was 2, I was giving him a bath and a spider just dropped on the ledge of the bathtub. And he screamed. It was funny because I always thought you had to teach children to be afraid of insects. You know, and I love insects, so I couldn't. But he was really scared, genuinely screaming. I tried to show him the spider, make friends. He wanted out of the tub. So later, I always have lots of materials around. I have a plastic tub of animals, and one was a spider. I brought it out. He had a little baby doll. I had some Play-Doh around. He started playing. 2 years old. He made a blanket and covered the baby up and said the baby is scared of the spider. And then he took the blanket off. They encountered each other, put the blanket back on, repeated it. A little 2-year-old. He went over this over and over and over until he'd worked his way through that fear, projected his fear onto the baby, protected the baby with the Play-Doh, and had some sense of resolution and mastery over his own fear experience. Those are the simple elements of play that you can see as early as 2. They get a lot more complicated as children get older, but still at the root of good play are those elements. Something a child has experienced, they use their imagination to make up a story, and it's satisfying some need, some deep felt need. And as play gets more and more complex all the way through childhood, and brain scientists would say the neural structures of the brain are getting stronger as play keeps developing, and that in turn is going to support more complex play. This example also is like a really everyday stress example of a kid who has all of his basic needs met. Jackson has home, he has food, he has security and love from his parents. There are a lot of children, and so those everyday play examples we see in kids all the time. There are a lot of kids who have toxic stress from poverty and violence and abuse that's, I'm sorry, but we're the richest country in the world and we have the highest poverty rate among the wealthy countries, child poverty rate, and it's criminal, and it's just sickening. And we have to keep working on more social justice and economic justice in this country so kids don't experience trauma and stress from poverty and difficult living situations that shouldn't be there. Nevertheless, play, regardless of the kid's situation, is a hugely important resource. And many of you may know, I certainly do because I worked in El Salvador during the war there, and I saw what play did for the kids who were experiencing war directly. And I think some people here have worked with kids in experiencing a lot of stress. No, play is really vital for them as well. I'm just saying we have to work on more justice as long as we also help them play. So it's very worrisome that play is disappearing from children's lives today. It is definitely a big alarm. Kids are playing less, way less, for a lot of reasons, but the two biggest ones are they're playing less in school because unfortunately in this misguided ed reform era that started with standardized tests and a focus on data and accountability and standards has pushed down to kindergarten and even pre-K and almost eradicated play from many classrooms, completely from some, unfortunately in the most low-income areas. So inequality and injustice manifest there too. As kids in wealthier situations, their teachers figure out how to get them some play. But kids are not getting a chance to play in school like they used to. And are instead, unfortunately, getting a lot of direct instruction and drilling on this unfortunate method of what we would call directed learning instead of constructed learning that I referred to earlier. The other reason that children are playing less is screens. Because outside of school, as you well know, kids are spending hours on screens and replacing the time that would have been spent in play, probably the time that you spent in play when you were a child. So the time is one issue, and then there's another issue which has been going on for several decades, which is that what kids see on the screen The stories, the cartoons, the movies, they often see repeatedly, and they often see show up in all those forms, or even now in apps and things that they have handhelds, are also coordinated with toys. So lots of kids have toys that are exact replicas of what they've seen on the screen, as well as props. And when you watch them play, you see that they're playing out, they're imitating really the stories that they've watched on the screen instead of their own original play. So the elements of play that we talked about already are getting lost because you won't see so much of the original stories coming from kids, but more of this scripted play that is much more media-driven and marketing-driven, really, because of all the toys that they're sold. So play itself is threatened right now. I hope I explained how serious that is, because it's a big threat to children's cognitive development and emotional and mental health if they lose this resource that is so universal. And also the quality of their play is undermined. Sort of the meaning-making function of play is undermined by screen content. Number 5, children build inner resilience and coping skills through play. When my husband Doug and I went to Guatemala when Jake was just turning 5, his mom Ramona told me that when we had left the year before, when he was 4, he had cried and cried and cried. And we had explained we were leaving, so I felt really bad about that, and I felt this time I got to do a better job of this. So the day before, I had the whole afternoon with him. The day before, we were flying back to Boston. And I wanted to make it concrete for him. You know, Doug and I are going, and I drew a little house with stick figures, and I said, we're going back to Boston tomorrow. You know, so we're going to go back in our house, and we'll be there in our house in Boston where he had been. Well, I had, let's see, in that was a little room in Guatemala. I had some popsicle sticks, paper and crayons, and Play-Doh. That's what I had around. He got busy, and he played all afternoon by himself. I was in the room, I watched, but he was playing alone. He made houses in Guatemala, in Boston, all kinds of houses, with crayons, with Play-Doh. In every single situation, he put all of us in the house. Mommy, Daddy, Doug, me, and him, over and over. He built airplanes, and he flew them between Guatemala and Boston. And in every single airplane, there were 5 of us. Back and forth, he played for a long, long time. And finally, we were winding down. I said, oh, Jake, this has been so much fun, flying these airplanes and in these houses, all of us. But remember tomorrow, Doug and I will go on an airplane. I put 2 little pieces on the airplane. We'll go back to Boston tomorrow. So Ramona, my stepdaughter, said, Jake woke up the next morning and he goes, Grandpa, Doug, and Nancy are gone. They went to Boston. And no tears, he was fine. Inner resilience takes a long, long time to build in children. Experience after experience after experience. But even this one, he had inside himself, hey, I did this, you know. This was hard. This transition was hard. I'm sad. I love them. We're together constantly for a month, 6 weeks. I didn't want them to go. But he did it. And he has it in him. I did this. And the next time he comes up to something challenging, that's inside, that confidence, that self-awareness. He's not going to crumble. The materials that he played with have a lot to do with what he was able to do. Because if he had something from, I don't know, Star Wars or something that directed his play, it would not have been as easy. I mean, he invented the houses, invented the planes, invented who was on them. It was his, and it helped him, those open-ended, undefined materials. They helped him get to inside what he needed to get to between his own emotional needs. My granddaughters, Gia and Stella, have an app on the phone called Puppet Pals. Do you know it? It's very popular, and it's advertised to promote creative play. And I watch them play with it. What you do is you have these just heads of different characters. You can put them on different bodies. You can move the limbs around. And you put them on animals, and you can tell a story. But what happens is they get so carried away with moving all the heads and limbs and animals. Do you want the giraffe and the elephant and all? That the story really takes a super backseat and isn't very prominent. I think that Jake would think Puppet Pals was fun. He would probably like to play with it, make the characters, put them on the animals. He'd think that was fun. But if he did it, it would take away from his opportunity to reach his own deep psyche, the needs of his own deep psyche. I think we can really say that the extent to which whatever is on the screen shapes play, to that extent the play cannot contribute to children's inner resilience and development of coping skills. These things are so hard for me to explain in nuggets to people. That's why if someone asks me something about a screen, I'm like, oh, you have a half an hour. Because this stuff goes pretty deep, and it's hard to just say it simply. Anyway, okay. You're still with me, and I've got one more point. Children live and learn in a social context. Almost anything they do is connected to people. Oh, really? I've got much time? I'm not even needed, but great. I thought I was up. Oh, I have till 10. You know what? I thought I had till 10, so I was rushing. Okay, maybe we'll even have some discussion. I'd love that, but. Children live and learn in a social context. They are always interacting. Almost always, not always, but often in some human context. If we look back at these kids we saw in blocks when we were talking about their cognitive development, look, they're interacting with each other, they're building together, they're talking to each other, they're learning from each other, they're sharing ideas, they're cooperating. All these social skills come along with children's interaction. And kids actually, they build social awareness and social and emotional awareness and skill through activities and interactions. That's how they build that awareness and skill. And there are many, many social skills kids need to build an understanding of, and it takes years and years to do it, to understand themselves, to understand their own feelings, to try to understand others. It's very hard to understand other people and understand other perspectives. How many of us struggle with that now? It's hard sometimes to see things from someone else's point of view. And from a developmental point of view, it's very difficult for children to get outside of their own view and understanding someone else's. So it's little by little incremental experiences that lead them to a place where they're going to gradually, hopefully, be healthy socially and emotionally. It's the same as cognitive development, just as we talked about building cognitive concepts through interactions with objects and hands-on experiences with objects. The social and emotional development also has to do with interacting in the social world and constructing ideas over time. There's a really scary trend today. I think it's alarming to me and dangerous, which is that screens are interfering with children's social and emotional development. Screens are being used in place of the experiences kids need to have, and they're not getting the very experiences they need to have in order to develop in this way. My friend Joyce told me that she got on a bus recently, and there was a caregiver or a parent right across with a 1-year-old. And Joyce is a really childhood person. She loves babies. She and that baby started interacting. They were making faces at each other and moving their heads. And then the caregiver whipped out a smartphone. And the baby looked away from Joyce, down at the phone, and never looked back. And that Joyce was just reporting to me, like, do you know what happened to me on the bus? And that to me was really exactly what I find so scary, is that it's become automatic. The caregiver is not really even thinking. It's just like, let's get the phone out here and amuse the kid. The caregiver is not even, this is a huge area where we need to be focusing a lot of our education work, because a lot of adults believe this is the good thing for the baby. Technology, it's been sold to them that it's good. This is entertaining, this makes the baby happy. We have a lot of work to help people understand, no, that is absolutely not to that child's benefit. We saw this influence of screens on interfering in relationships, parent-child relationships, when smartphones first came in. Quite a few of us were observing in public places like parks and restaurants that all of a sudden kids and parents are there and parents are on their phone. And I was in the park often, because I take the grandkids to the park all the time, where a kid would be on the jungle gym like, Daddy, Daddy. He's like, oh yeah, good. And then back onto the phone. But the quality of that presence, that important feeling children need to have, that you're there with them, you're present with them, and they can tell, they certainly know if you're not, was eroding as parents got distracted and occupied and trying to get their email done while they're on the bench in the park. I'm sympathetic to that, but you know, it's just not, it's at a huge cost to kids. But then, as apps started coming in for kids, marketed to little kids, and tablets became widespread and on mobile devices everywhere, we started seeing something even more insidious, which is caregivers, adults, parents, using the phone, for example, to, like the caregiver, to entertain, to appease, or distract a child from a difficult emotional experience, a conflict, a hard transition, a sad moment. And the scary thing is it works so well. It's so darn seductive. It's so easy to do because it's just like magic. And it's really effective parenting. Because if you have an easy option like that and you don't want to see your kid miserable, you just go for it. But it's bypassing a lot of critical social and emotional experience. So, a couple summers ago, I went away for a week with another family. My friend Lynn, she's another grandmother, her daughter, and the daughter's husband, and Lynn's grandson, Quentin, he just turned 5. And we had a whole week together. We had a really great time. And on the last morning, Lynn had to go see her mom who was sick. And she explained to Quentin that she had to go. And she pulled out of the driveway, and I was downstairs with him. And I know this little boy really well, he started to wail. Just a piercing wailing cry. As Lynn pulled out, she didn't hear him, but crying so hard. I was amazed, and I brought him into a chair. He just was sobbing, and gave him just time to cry. And when he started, breathing, I said, when he was calming down, I said, Quentin, I have an idea. How about I'll give you a piece of paper and some markers, and you can make a drawing, because I knew he didn't write yet. You can make a drawing for Nana, and we'll go to the post offices right on the corner and mail it to her. Oh, he liked that. But he was looking for relief, and this was going to be it. So I set him up at a table. I just left him there for a while. And when they came back, well, he was working pretty hard. When they came back, he showed me this. Some of you know how to read invented spelling. This was the first time he ever wrote. You want to try it? Anybody want to try it? Invented spelling starts with just doing the first letter usually of a word. So let's try it. I miss you, Nana. Why did you have to leave? I really love you. So I could have given him, Quentin loves phones, like a lot of kids we know. If I put my phone down, there'd be like 2 apps downloaded in no time by him, like a lot of kids. So you have to keep your phone up on the refrigerator. I could have easily, when he was crying like that, it would have been easy. He was in pain. It's hard to see. I could have said, Quentin, you want to play that game? You would love it on my phone. Because it works. But it works in the short term. That's the issue we've got here. It solves stuff in the short term, but it's not giving him the chance to, what? In this case, actually feel his feelings, put name to his feelings, find actually letters to express his feelings, and write a letter to his Nana, which she treasures, of course, so to build his relationship with her in this beautiful way. And anyone here interested in early literacy, this is really key because we've so often in education today and with these online embedded programs, taking the meaning, the personal meaning of symbols away from children and instead just drilling them on these empty, meaningless sounds and letters and numbers, which belong to them and they should always feel are theirs. So, yeah, so it's very difficult to convince parents whose kids are unhappy, so no one wants an unhappy kid, to go through the experience instead of over it, instead of bypassing it. And especially when you've got a tool right there that you know is going to get you out of the situation. So we really have, it's an uphill climb for us. We have our work cut out for us. We have to find ways, to help parents and caregivers understand the value of social experiences, even when they're challenging, and get tools. It's so easy. It becomes so habitual to hand the phone. It's not that hard to say, do you want paper and markers? It's not that big a deal. It's just that people have gotten out of the practice and it's not in their consciousness anymore. It's not that hard to get it back in. And the more we practice as adults doing it, the much more we're going to be helping this generation of kids. So we have to find ways, and we're trying to, aren't we? Find ways to help parents understand the value of first-hand experiences, learning through hands-on activities and actions and materials and interactions with people, understanding the value of play and the critical need of play and how to support it and keep it alive in the ways that it's meant to be, that is, serve its natural purposes that it can serve for children, and helping them make meaning of their experience, helping them build in resilience and coping skills. So I don't have easy answers for how we're going to do it, but we're going to meet a working group and we're going to talk about how we can do it. I do have suggestions on that handout that you'll be able to download, but they fall short. I mean, we have a lot to do, but we need each other to be able to do it, and hopefully we're going to be able to. So thank you for listening.